Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is SportsIQ with Larry Smith.
Halfway through the week here in the SportsIQ. Glad you're with us. Larry Smith, Tony Cordero, Joshua Ewing. We're the team making up SportsIQ with Larry Smith. Glad you're with us. By the way, don't go away. Quick programming note: these next 2 days, we have programming for. Listen, we promise Monday through Friday. We give you Monday through Friday, whether you're eating turkey or not. We got you covered. So be sure to come back. We've got some. We'll get schedule wise what's happening in the world of sports. There's a ton happening, not just in football but basketball as well. And then we've got some great interview guests as well. We're going to run a few of your favorite interviews that maybe you might have missed in the past few weeks, some of our favorites as well. Always great content every day, and we're glad you're here for that. And that day also extends to today as well. In a couple of minutes here, we'll talk a little NBA, a little Denver Nuggets with Ryan Stano of Heavy.com. Matt Perkins joining us too from the Believe in Badgers podcast. The Wisconsin Badgers, talk about just a shocking win. They go up and they get out of can whoop up, right, on Illinois last week. I mean, it was like, who knew this Badger team had that? They were going to fire their coach like a month ago. Well, all of a sudden, that's they're back in love again with the Badgers up there in Madison. We'll talk to him about that. And producer Tony catching up with Damian Sordelet a bit later. Virginia Tech, the new head coach, let the James Franklin era begin. They'll try to get things kicked off with an upset win over UVA this weekend. So lots coming up. We'll talk CFP playoff bids as well, the CFP rankings, I should say, as well, here later on this show. Speaking of that, they came out on Tuesday night, last night. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, you might want to start lighting up some candles, set up some prayers, get Joe Boo a bottle of rum, something, anything. You get this thing going because the committee has some issues. The Rebels were dropped to 7th place in the latest rankings behind Oregon, which beat a ranked USC team this past Saturday. Remember, the committee will look at Ole Miss differently if they won't have Lane Kiffin on their sideline in the postseason. And there's some talk here of Kiffin making the decision on Sunday, possibly, to go do something else, like LSU, Florida. We'll watch that space. Top 5 remain the same, though. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Texas Tech. Fans of Texas, your team pretty much cooked as far as the playoff is concerned. The Longhorns dropping behind Michigan in the latest rankings. It'd be an impressive win over Texas A&M in Austin to get a look at the committee. I believe it would be like their third top 10 win this season. But the Wolverines right now are at 12. That means the committee probably has them set up for a bid if they can beat Ohio State in Ann Arbor on Saturday. We'll dive more to the rankings a bit later with producer Tony. He is putting on his Karnak hat right now and checking the tea leaves. College hoops now. Last night, Players Era Championship, some quality hoops played and more set for today. 17th ranked Tennessee outplaying Houston in the second half and hanging on for the 76-73 upset win. By the way, that hands the Cougars their first loss of the season. Jacoby Gillespie had 22 points and made all 6 of his free throws in the final 35 seconds, while Jalen Carey added 13 for the Volunteers. Remember just 8 months ago when Auburn knocked off Michigan 78-65 in the Sweet 16? Well, the Wolverines came back and extracted their pound of flesh in a big way. Roddy Gale and Yaxel Lindenborg, each with 17 points, as number 7 Michigan routed the 21st ranked Auburn Tigers 102-72 in a game that really was never close. Michigan has now won both of their games in Vegas by a combined 70 points. Now, today may just be the best day of college basketball for hoops fans until we get to the tournament in March. You can watch in order. Get this. Syracuse, led by Carmelo Anthony's son Kian, plays Iowa State. The Orange, the only 0-2 team to advance to play today. They lost their first 2 games to Big 12 teams, Houston and Kansas, by missing a total of 27 of their 52 free throws that they attempted in those 2 games. That's first. Then 2:30, USC, unbeaten, plays 6-1 Arizona State in the Maui Classic. That's on ESPN. 5-2 Notre Dame gets 6-1 Houston in the Players Era Tournament at 3:30 on TNT. After a break for dinner, Kansas and Tennessee square off at 7 p.m. That's on TNT. And then later on True TV at 8 o'clock, St. John's and Auburn. And the capper to the day, 9:30, unbeaten Gonzaga faces off against Michigan on TNT. And so we ask you the question, are you not entertained? You should be. All right. Well, NBA conversation right now. The Denver Nuggets, one of the teams we thought ahead of time would be a contender, even though we knew the Thunder were going to do what they're doing, and they're doing that. But Denver is right there. The big win the other night, 125-115 over the Grizzlies, now 13-4 overall. And joining us right now from Heavy.com, NBA writer Ryan Stano is here. Ryan, welcome to Sports IQ. Really, listen, to me, as long as Nikola Jokić is on a team, you have a chance because he's just such a unique player. And again, it's amazing how I don't know if I've ever seen. I mean, I didn't see Oscar Robertson play live. I'm not that old. But it just feels like he just falls into triple doubles. Like he just does it so effortlessly.
He does. Quite simply put, he's the best player in the league, and I don't think, I really don't think it's all that close. I know SGA won MVP last year. He's on the defending champs, and Oklahoma City is, far and away the best team right now. But with what Jokić has to work around him, especially since the Christian Brown injury, it's ridiculous what he's doing. I mean, he's sixth in the league in points. He leads the league in assists as a center, and he's second in rebounds. I mean, those players they just don't grow on trees. And as long as he's able to stay healthy, it's going to be tough for other teams to contend with them. Now, obviously, they do have to deal with the Brown injury that has shortened their bench a little bit. And coming into this year, we thought Denver's bench was much improved with the additions, players like Tim Hardaway, someone who could actually spread the floor a little bit, kind of the opposite of what Russell Westbrook was able to do for them last year. And so now with that rotation a little bit shortened, it's a little tougher for Denver here in the near term future. But like you said, as long as Jokić is on the floor, they're going to be considered a contender at the end of the year.
Yeah, he's just special. That triple double of the night, 17, 16 assists. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Rebounds, 10th triple double already. And, we're just a month into the season, thereabouts.
Yeah.
What he has done. This Denver team right now, again, 13-4. What is it about this team that you think they're doing differently maybe than last year when they came up short of expectations?
So this year, partially it seems like everyone kind of knows their role now. I know last year, Christian Brown was really kind of stepping into his own. Peyton Watson was kind of unclear whether he was in the rotation. Is he not? He was kind of bouncing back and forth between roles there. Now it seems like coming into this year, everyone knows what they're expected to do. And we've seen the results on the court. I mean, Denver, they're second in offensive rating. So their offense is, by far and away one of the best in the league. Their defense is, top 11. So they're at least an above average defense. And that's really all this team needs to be in order to be a contender, because Jokić just controls the tempo of the game so well. He has such a feel for the court and where everyone else is going to be. And you see that it's not just him moving the ball. I mean, the team in general, they've got the third best assist ratio in the league. So everyone is moving the ball. They're cutting more. And I do think you have to wonder if the distraction of the whole Michael Malone firing at the end of the year that seemed to have kind of run its course. So it seems now they've got a better sense of direction. They've got a better sense of what they want to do, and we're seeing it on the court where pretty much every night they're going to be favored to win a game.
I was going to bring that up in terms of Malone no longer being there. And that was one, I think, to some observers, a surprise. I mean, you weren't that far removed from an NBA title that had to shake things up. And I think, to your point, you feel like they've rebounded from that now and kind of got, the players got themselves back on track in terms of who they are and where they're going?
No, I do. And part of the firing from Malone, I think he's a good coach, but at some point you also, when you are a head coach for as long as he was in one spot, your voice just kind of gets stale and players kind of tune you out no matter how successful you've been. And it's very rare that coaches stay longer than, 4 or 5 years within a particular organization. I mean, you look around the league, Eric Spoelstra, Steve Kerr, that's pretty much it at this point. I mean, I think Rick Carlisle is like the third longest tenured, and he's been with the Pacers here in his second stint for the last 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. So, having Adelman come in and just kind of have a fresh voice to really just have something new. I think that gives more of a vigor to this team. I think it gives them more motivation. And again, it's just when you hear the same thing over and over, it's kind of easy to get complacent and tune them out, even if that is what got you success in the first place. So I do think that they've kind of rebounded from the Malone firing, and now they look like they're firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point, too, as we're talking to Ryan Stano of heavy.com, a little NBA conversation, that I think that it's where you get those legendary coaches like Kerr and Popovich, Jackson, Riley, I mean, that stay a long time. And you mentioned again, even Eric Spoelstra, got the 2 titles, obviously, in the LeBron years. But, it has kept them in the mix. And that's one where, with other organizations, might have cut him loose, but I think he's been there getting close to 20 years now, I think, right? 18 years he's been.
Yeah.
I think that's where, again, we should really take our hat off to coaches like that who can stay in place and keep their voices heard, sometimes with the same core of players like you have, currently right now in Golden State.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, in today's NBA with, a lot of the player movement that slowed down a little bit here with the new CBA, but I feel like with the player movement, that encouraged a lot of front offices to side with the players in a lot of disputes. And it was just easier for them to go ahead and fire the coach and look for someone else that the players like listening to. And I don't, you look around the league, that didn't really lend itself to a whole lot of success. And you mentioned Spoelstra. I mean, even since those 2 LeBron titles, he won before that with Wade. In the last few years, he was able to bring the Heat to the finals, 2020 against the Nuggets. And then, 2020 in the Lakers against the Lakers in the bubble, and then against the Nuggets in 2023. So he clearly still has the voice of his team, and he can help. He can really kind of do anything with the roster that's set in front of him. And that's a rare thing. Steve Kerr's obviously had Steph Curry with him for his entire tenure. So it helps when you have got the greatest shooter to ever live. That kind of lends itself to some success. But I think we'll start to see the better run organizations start to stick with their coaches a little bit longer. And I think a lot of teams around the league are kind of looking at what the Pacers have done with their continuity, not just with their roster, but with their coach. And that continuity led to an improbable finals run. And quite frankly, they were a Tyrese Halliburton injury away from possibly winning the title. And I think a lot of other teams can take something from that.
Yeah, no, totally agree. A couple of other teams that have caught our eye. One, the Lakers right now, 12-4, as we stand here right now, getting into the holiday. Are you surprised they've had this kind of success, considering that LeBron missed the first few weeks? And even Luka was out for some time as well. And yet here they are, 12-4. They're right there in the mix atop the West.
Yeah, they absolutely are. I am a little bit surprised, mainly because I wasn't sure about the DeAndre Ayton fit. We've seen Ayton kind of flame out in 2 different spots, and it was the same story in both. He's got a lot of talent, but he just doesn't seem like he likes playing basketball that much, quite frankly. And sometimes he's just kind of loafing around on the court. But so far with Los Angeles, I got to give him credit. He's looked motivated. He's played well. And, it helps to play with someone like Luka when he's healthy on the court, who can feed him lobs, get him easy buckets, and keep him engaged. I did not expect the Lakers to be able to all credit in the world to Austin Reeves. He's made a gigantic leap in what has been a critical year for him, because his future is in doubt. And quite honestly, I'm not sure the Lakers can be able to afford to keep him here soon. I think he's going to get a big contract elsewhere. But his offensive leap has really helped the Lakers stabilize without LeBron and without Luka in lineup at times. And I think their defense has been it's been better than what a lot of people thought, especially after the Timberwolves lost last year in the playoffs. They kind of got gashed on the perimeter with Edwards just cutting into the lane pretty much anytime he wants. They extend the time a little bit with that. And Marcus Smart's been a pretty big offseason addition to help with that. Now, we'll see how long he can stay healthy, because he's also someone that's got an injury history. But just now getting LeBron back will only make this team better. So I think they got to be considered a contender at this point.
Yeah. And LeBron should have fresher legs, considering he did miss some
Absolutely.
games. Getting long in the tooth. I mean, no matter Father Time always wins, no matter how long you put him off. One more team I want to talk about before I let you go is a team that just is not getting a lot of buzz, and that's Toronto. We talked Detroit with the Detroit beat writer and the Pistons, but the Raptors, if it weren't for Detroit, they'd be the talk of the East. They're 13-5 right now. What's going on with this team?
Yeah, honestly, I did not see this coming.
Yeah.
Toronto coming into this year, they had a lot of players that just didn't really seem to fit all that well on paper.
Right.
I mean, you got Quickly, you got Ingram, you got Scotty Barnes, and who's going to handle the ball? Those guys are all ball dominant. Is there enough shots to go around? And they seem to have figured it out. I think a large part of it has been the fact that they've been able to have Brandon Ingram healthy this entire season. Last year he played 18 games total, and he didn't play at all once he got traded to Toronto. This year he's already played he's already matched that game total, and his stats are right around the same as last year. I think, winning 8 straight, you definitely have to take them seriously. Their offense has been, quite frankly, a lot better than what I expected them to be. They're 6th in offensive rating. Defensively, they're 7th, so they're playing really well on both sides of the ball. Jakob Poeltl is a great rim protector, and their bench has been a little bit better than what people thought they were going to be coming in. So it's definitely a surprise. Now, the question is, how long are they going to be able to sustain it? I have a feeling they might be akin to that Bulls team a couple of years ago that came out of the gates firing, was the number 1 seed, and then injuries kind of derailed them a bit. Brandon Ingram's got a history of injuries. Scotty Barnes had a major injury. So we'll see how they're able to kind of keep it together. But so far, you can't help but, be happy for what Toronto's done. And Toronto fans finally have something to be happy about since their title back in 19.
Yeah, exactly. 1-4 start. You mentioned 8 wins in a row, 12 wins the last 13 games. I mean, they're balling right now. It's been great. Hey, listen, Ryan, great to have you on the show. Welcome. Hopefully you'll come back again.
Yeah.
But blessings here during the Thanksgiving. Be safe, and we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, appreciate it. Ryan Stano once again joining us. He's an NBA writer for Heavy.com, and again talking Denver Nuggets and some other surprise teams as we get into this first holiday weekend, if you will, of the NBA season. Okay, much more Sports IQ coming up after this.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
One of the things we had not gotten to yet this week is Wisconsin football. We talked about all the coaching vacancies 6 weeks ago. We were like, yeah, of all the, Franklin, Kelly, all the guys being booted. Boy, that guy in Madison probably too. Luke Fickell, he's on his way out. Well, Wisconsin held on to the man for not only this year, but moving forward. They're going to invest more money, et cetera. And lo and behold, they turn in maybe their best efforts in the Fickell era, a 27-10 pasting of Illinois that really wasn't even that close, to be honest. Joining us once again on the show is Matt Perkins with the Believe in Badgers podcast. Matt, we're talking before we came on here. You know what? Usually we start talking Wisconsin football, and you're not smiling. This is the first time we've had you on, and you're smiling. That's how good this win was on Saturday.
Yeah, like I said before we started recording, it's the first time in like 5 years that I think Wisconsin football has made me smile. And because this was old school Wisconsin, it was run game and defense. And what really stood out, and we've seen throughout the season, is that Wisconsin's defensive front, especially against the run, has been very, very good. And they were elite in this game. I think Illinois had 50 yards rushing in this one. Yeah. And the pass rush was there once again, 5 sacks, including 3 from Daryl Peterson, who has really blossomed here in his senior season in Madison and has become sort of the heart and soul of this Badgers defense. And him, along with Ben Barton, 6-year senior, originally recruited to play offensive line, switched over to defense a couple of years ago, and who has just grown in leaps and bounds. And it was, like I said, old school Wisconsin football, right? No one could run the ball against them. No one really has run the ball against them very much this year. Now, their pass defense has been very suspect, but they were all over Luke Altmaier this game, and Luke Altmaier never seemed to get comfortable at all. They had a couple big pass plays, one of which I thought could have been an incompletion. They reviewed it and they decided it was a completion. That's what they called it on the field. I thought that was kind of 50-50. Besides that, it was a defensive masterclass from Mike Tressel, who had been very beleaguered in the past couple of seasons, who has really sort of changed up the scheme of this team. Went from starting his defense in Madison a couple of years ago as a 3-3-5. Just realized that is not going to work in the Big Ten. They got absolutely pounded by Iowa last year. Iowa last year game was the nadir of this Wisconsin defense. Iowa ran for over 300 yards against them. And they invested in the defensive tackle position in the portal, had got a lot of growth from a 6-year senior in Ben Barton. And it has really turned this team around and made them competitive, especially here in the second half of the season.
Also, one thing on the telecast on Big Ten Network that they mentioned, this is the third game in a row with 5 sacks. What is it about this defense all of a sudden that they've woken up and become this monster?
Teams now have to double team on the inside. They have to double team Ben Barton, JVR Suggs, and then Brandon Lane when he comes in. And that has opened up Mason Reiger and Daryl Peterson to get after the quarterback. And those guys are really able to pin their ears back. Mason Reiger has been a revelation, transfer from Louisville. He got healthy. He really struggled with injuries during his career at Louisville and is now really turned into a guy that can win off the edge most of the time. And I think that but it really starts with those guys on the interior of the defensive line, able to get pressure over the middle. So teams have to double team and let Peterson, let Reiger, get those one-on-one matchups against tackles who they are quicker than and equally as strong, especially Peterson. We saw Peterson bully the Illinois offensive line this past weekend, and he was able to do that against Washington. He was able to do that against Indiana. And that has just really turned around everything for Wisconsin. I mean, I think they might have, I don't even know if they had 12 sacks the entire season last year. Wow. And, 15 in the last 3 games.
Yeah, they were impressive. And like you said, they were in Altmaier's face all night long. The running game was not exception for Illinois. It's too little, too late for this season. Now 4-7, 5 wins, the best you can do. The big trophy game against Minnesota this weekend. But what does it say for this administration and really in college athletics that in a year and when it was very quick to get rid of somebody very quickly, given Fickell hasn't done overall what we thought he might do, in his whole tenure. But what does it say for the administration to have the vote of confidence at a time when I think last time we talked, we felt that, you've got a bye week coming up. He's probably gone at the bye week ahead of, so give him 2 weeks for the next game against whoever it was, Ohio State, Indiana, whatever. They didn't do that. Instead, they did an about face, said, no, we're going to stick with our man. What does that say? Does it send a message to college sports that maybe hang on to somebody and it'll happen?
I think in this case, it gave the team clarity. And I think that is a really big thing. There was no hanging over the head, will they, won't they, et cetera. And I think that sort of has galvanized the team. I also think that the fact that they've had a true freshman quarterback come in and take the reins and say, this is my team. Right. And instead of having, the transfer in Hunter Simmons, who was not playing effectively, maybe Carter Smith doesn't have the accuracy of a Hunter Simmons, but he can run the ball with his legs, and he is clearly a tenacious leader. And the guys have completely rallied around him. On the defensive side of the ball, you got 2 more true freshmen, Mason Posa and Cooper Catalano, starting at inside linebacker, those 2 guys. And I think that injection of youthful energy has gone so far for this program and shows that Fickell can recruit guys who can play at a Big Ten level and let those guys play early. And I think that has done so much. And so in a season of great change across the college football landscape, Wisconsin also knew that, they'd maybe be the 7th or 8th best job available. So who are you really going to get as the coach there, right, to replace Luke Fickell? Are you going to do better than Luke Fickell? When you've got LSU and Florida and Penn State and, you could argue Virginia Tech at, probably above them in the pecking order. What really would be the point, if you only have a certain amount of money, are going to allocate that to buying Luke Fickell out and then have no money for players in the portal? Or are you going to take that money, invested it back into the guys and say, hey, we still believe in Luke Fickell? And I think that, it is reminiscent of early Barry Alvarez in that way, shape, and form. I'm not saying he's going to be Barry Alvarez. No one's going to be Barry Alvarez. But what it is going to do is say, hey, to both the outside, people looking out and people inside the program, that this is a guy, this is how it's going to go. And, either get on board or get out.
Yeah, no question. You mentioned that Carter Smith, the true freshman. I was looking at his numbers from the box score, only 75 yards passing, only 19 yards rushing. but it felt like so much more than that. When you said that, I'm like, really? It just felt like he was 9 of 11. I think he completed his first 7 passes in a row or something. I think there's a lot to build on right now in terms of, and we've talked before in other shows about with the new era of college football, you're playing a different set of teams every year in the same conference, but you're not always playing the same teams. And so it may be where the next year's schedule works out better for Wisconsin, and maybe next year they are in that 8-9 win category.
Absolutely. Next year, they avoid Ohio State next year. They avoid Oregon next year. This year's schedule, they've arguably had the toughest schedule in the country. And, everyone knew it was going to be a tough season. I think most sports books had Wisconsin pegged at over under 4.5 wins this season. Well, they're at 4 now with a chance to go to 5. And there's probably not going to be enough 6-win teams in the country to make bowl games. And, Wisconsin has a very high APR score. Thank you to the academics there in Madison. And there's a chance they get to go bowling and they get those 15 extra practices, which would be massive, especially for Carter Smith. I also think that with that, you stop the quarterback carousel that you've had every year in Madison. And you've got to say, hey, this is our guy. He's going to be the guy going forward. We're not trying to bring in a new portal quarterback to start and completely have to adapt to him yet again. And again, it's all about that clarity, I think. And Luke Fickell has, preached since he got in there. He wants to build a culture. Well, how do you build a culture? You recruit guys and then you play the guys that you recruit. And, like I said, with those freshman linebackers, with Eugene Hilton, the true freshman receiver, a lot of these redshirt freshmen on the offensive line who've definitely taken their lumps this year. I mean, Emerson Mandel has really struggled. He's been playing out of position in right tackle, the entire year. He's a guard. They've been playing Colin Cubberly at right guard, who is probably not truly ready for Big Ten ball yet, but now he's in there. He's been getting the reps and he'll be more ready for next season. And I think that, with all of that, taking those hits and, seeing probably what was rock bottom, they now have a very clear path forward in how to not just dig out, but hopefully, build on top of that and then be back in the upper echelon of the Big Ten in a year or two.
Yeah, very, very much so. I want to get to basketball very quickly. The Badgers suffering their first loss Friday night against a very, very good BYU team. I think if folks are not paying attention, BYU, they're in the top 10 for a reason. What can Greg Gard and the staff and this team take away from that loss? They head into the weekend play, taking on Providence this weekend, and then opening Big Ten play next week against Northwestern.
I think that what they can do is, figure out what they need to do, especially on the boards, right? Because I think that we knew the interior was going to be a struggle. We knew that, they don't have a ton of size. You really got Nolan Winter and then a bunch of unproven guys there on the inside. And, I think, they're hoping that Nick Boyd can do his best John Tonje impression, but I'd also like to see Blackwell, have more ball handling duties. I think he's the most talented guy on this roster. Yes, Nick Boyd is a very seasoned player. He's, played a lot of very good basketball, but Blackwell still has the biggest upside of anyone on this roster. And he needs to have the ball in his hands more. And he is someone who can truly create off the dribble for himself. And I think Boyd can do a little bit of that, but I think it's really going to be down to Blackwell to, if they are going to succeed in another year of a stacked Big Ten, right? You look at a Purdue, Michigan State's always there. Illinois is always going to be good there now. And I think that they really need to figure out how can they make Blackwell their number one scoring option in order to be a competitor in the Big Ten. Now, Nolan Winter is playing out of position at center. He's really a stretch four. He doesn't really have sort of the girth and the strength to be a center in the Big Ten, but he has to because of their roster limitations. So they have some true freshmen that they are going to be leaning on. Some transfers are going to be leaning on there in the interior, but it's going to be up to Nolan Winter to really step up and be more of an interior presence.
Okay. Fair enough. We will leave it there. Got a little basketball question in there before we get to the holidays. Matt, always good to talk with you. Happy Thanksgiving. Blessings to your families. We'll talk to you soon.
Likewise. Thanks as always, Larry. Great to see you.
All right. Good to see you as well. Matt Perkins joining us once again from the Believe in Badgers podcast. Hey, hope springs eternal in football. We've been bashing the Badger football program all season long, but listen, big win. Let's build on this and see what happens this coming Saturday and again in 2026. All right. Much more to come here on the Sports IQ.
Fans of big sports radio and sports spectacular podcasts have a new home on the Chief Sports Network. Find your favorite programs and content all in one place by downloading the Chief Sports app in your mobile device. Created in South Carolina, the Chief Sports Network is the home of an expanding network of live and podcast format programming. It is also the home of one of the leading national college football podcasts, JC and Morgan, hosted by ESPN's Mike Morgan and 24/7 Sports' JC Sherbert. Download the Chief Sports app for free and find all of your favorite programming under one easy umbrella. Thanks to all of our markets for your loyal support of Big Sports Radio and our Sports Spectacular podcast, and we look forward to connecting with you anywhere in the world on the Chief Sports app.
You're locked in to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
And we continue here on this 26th of November. Producer Tony has our next guest.
Well, thanks so much, Larry. And, there are a lot of college football head coaching dominoes that have yet to fall. Everybody's kind of waiting to see what happens with Lane Kiffin, Izzy, Willie, Woney, Howie. We'll see what happens. But one that has fallen is Virginia Tech filled their spot last week, bringing in former Penn State coach James Franklin. Joining us today is Damian Sordelet. He is the Virginia Tech beat writer for the Roanoke Times. Damian, thanks so much for taking some time on this holiday week to join us.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, let's dive into how we came to James Franklin as the new head coach at Virginia Tech. The season didn't get off to a great start. They decided to make the change. First of all, what led to that change, do you think? And when did we know that James Franklin might be the front runner for this job?
Well, the change came. This was a make or break fourth year for Brent Pry. He was 16-21 entering the season. The third season, they were expected to take a jump forward from a 7-6 2023. They retained most of the roster from that season that showed a significant improvement at the end of the year, except they didn't win any one-score games. That was, I believe, one of the issues that held Pry back was the inability to win close games. They only had one such win during his 3+ years there, and they started this season with promise, showing fight against South Carolina. But after halftime against Vanderbilt, when you're up 20-10, and then you get boat raced in the second half, and then you open the following week getting absolutely bounced around by Old Dominion, and you're getting booed off the field to the locker room, that sort of signaled the end of Pry's tenure as a head coach at Virginia Tech. People in Blacksburg love him as a man, but they just felt the fit wasn't right for him as a head coach, especially when he started off with first-time coordinators on both offense and defense. And with a first-time head coach, that's a recipe that rarely ever succeeds. And he had made changes at both coordinator positions during the offseason, one by necessity on defense, and one because Tyler Bowen saw the writing on the wall and left to take over as Ohio State's offensive line coach, which, hindsight being 2020, was the right move. But they formed an 8-member search committee to look for the next football coach. And it was diving into a lot of sitting head coaches. And really, when James Franklin was fired, it was about 28 days after Brent Pry was fired. One of the members of the search committee, Bud Foster, reached out to him, coach to coach, and said, "Man, this is tough. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Oh, by the way, we have a job available if you're interested. And, take your time, consider it." And it wasn't long after that, probably about a week after Franklin's firing, that Foster was one of 5 members of the search committee. Let me correct that. 4 members of the search committee plus athletic director Whit Babcock, who flew down to Georgia to meet with him. And they had a plan ready to go for Franklin. They pivoted very quickly after Franklin became available, and it became obvious that he was a candidate for the position. And they laid out the plan, laid out how they were going to fund it. He knew exactly the amount of money that was coming into Virginia Tech's athletic coffers to the tune of nearly $250 million over the next 4 years. And Virginia Tech had a plan for how they were going to utilize those resources. And that was appealing to Franklin. And he gave them a date of November 17th. And what do you know? He signed on November 17th because he understood recruiting weekend. Last weekend against Miami, bring in a bunch of recruits, this upcoming weekend. So that way he has a jump on the signing class, the early signing class, because as you mentioned in this coaching carousel, these dominoes are going to fall after the signing day on December 3rd. What's the advantage Virginia Tech has? James Franklin is already getting recruits to Blacksburg. A big one came on Tuesday before Thanksgiving with 4-star prospect Messiah Mickens at running back verbally committing. He is expected to be one of several blue chip candidates who are going to follow Franklin from either being committed to Penn State or considering Penn State, now coming to Virginia Tech. So it was a whirlwind month-long courtship that paid off because Virginia Tech was relentless. They had a plan, and they made sure Franklin realized that he was the priority.
So how key do you think it was that they've had this influx of cash into the athletic room? How much of that do you think helped sway Franklin that this was the place for him to take his career after Penn State?
It was vital. You can't go in and say, we worked on a shoestring budget for X number of years and had no results, and we still want to keep that up. No, that wasn't going to work. Athletic Director Whit Babcock made a presentation to the Board of Visitors on August 18th where he outlined where Virginia Tech was in terms of athletic funding, and it was at the very bottom of the public schools in the ACC, well behind Clemson, Florida State, UNC, and others. Football program has been fairly well sustained, but it wasn't to the level of the major players in the ACC. So Virginia Tech's Board of Visitors realized they needed to do something. And Rector John Rakovich told board members Jay Pearson and Ryan McCarthy, find us the money. And that's what they did. They found money to the tune of $229.2 million that began this fiscal year with an addition of $47.1 million added to the athletic budget. And they're going to add more than $60 million to the athletic budget over the next 3 years to get them above $200 million on an annual basis. That was appealing. But what sold Franklin was that when Virginia Tech went to Georgia to meet with him, they didn't just say, oh, here's a checkbook, what do you need? They said, here's what we have planned. Here's what we have resourced for. Tell us what you need. We'll make sure we have it. So he said, well, we need this much for NIL. All right, we're on board with that. I need this much for, assistant coach salary pool. Yeah, we got that. We want to be among the tops in the nation. Support staff pool, same thing. They up the ante on everything. Recruiting, we'll more than double what the recruiting budget was. So you have the ability and the resources to go out and recruit not only within the footprint, but also nationally for the players you feel can be game changers at Virginia Tech. And that really sold them. Most of that money is going to go to football. Whit Babcock has already stated that because Virginia Tech understands in its heyday, which was 2 decades ago, when football was successful, it was the front door to the university. And it led to higher enrollment. It led to engagement. So if football can get back to that, you'll see enrollment numbers go up and you'll see more fan engagement, which means wait list for season tickets, more people going to road games, more people coming to home games. And that's something that from, not only a bottom line standpoint, but also from an academic standpoint, if you're increasing your student pool because there's more interest in football, it's a win-win all around.
So what does Franklin, you think, bring to this university? The knock against Franklin has always been great coach, great program builder, built Vandy when Vandy was dead in the water, brought back, resuscitated Penn State after all the issues. Can he be a coach that can bring a program up and then get it over the hump? That's always been the question. Can he get a program over the hump and get big wins. What, in your mind, do you think he can do to make that happen at Virginia Tech?
Well, Tony, you mentioned it. He's a program builder, and he has done it. Had to do it at an academia like Vanderbilt, where it is very tough to recruit really high caliber players. And they won 9 games in a season for the first time since, I believe, the 1910s when he was there. At Penn State, they had the black cloud of the scandal that ended Joe Paterno's career there, and he got them back to relevancy and considered a blue blood. He can build programs. The knock on him with winning big games, Virginia Tech fans have said this. We want to be in big games again. It's been a while since Virginia Tech has been in a meaningful big game. They want to be in that situation again where the eyes of the college football world are on Blacksburg and Lane Stadium, and not just for the entrance to Enter Sandman. They want them to be there to watch a football game, not simply an entrance. And that's how James Franklin's going to build it. He's going to build it by bringing in good players. The first recruiting class is probably going to be key. And then whoever he brings in from the transfer portal most likely will be an influx of Penn State kids who he has already had relationships with. He has built, and he knows that what they can bring to the field. I have a feeling that he's going to try to build this thing very quickly. And the fact that he's had success at a Vanderbilt program that hadn't had success before, and certainly not what Clark Lee has enjoyed here in these last couple of years with Diego Pavia. And then the success he was able to build at Penn State, building a program essentially from the rubble into now they're talked about as blue bloods. No longer is the scandal at Penn State talked about. It's now talked about as a respected football program. He's going to do the same thing at Virginia Tech. And when you look at the landscape of the ACC and you look at the college football playoff rankings and you look at the possibility of a 6-way tie for first place, depending on how the chips fall this weekend in rivalry weekend, the ACC is up for the taking. And the ACC has needed Virginia Tech, in addition to, say, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, to be the flag bearers for this league, because the ACC understands when those teams are good, the league's reputation is so much better. And so that's going to help. And I'll circle back to big games. Virginia Tech hasn't beaten a non-conference Power 4 opponent since the 2017 opener against West Virginia.
Wow.
Virginia Tech lost back-to-back games to Vanderbilt. No shame there. Vanderbilt's good. Tech should have won in the 2024 opener, but they've lost to Purdue. They were losing to Rutgers. Teams that they should beat, they're losing to. James Franklin gets a chance now to change the narrative. And they have a non-conference Power 4 opponent this upcoming season in Maryland, which should be rather interesting with his relationship with Mike Loxley there in College Park. But if he can get a win over the Terrapins, that changes the narrative in terms of, okay, Virginia Tech can't win outside of the ACC. Now they're going out and getting a Big Ten win, which looks so much better for Virginia Tech. And I think that helps. If he can do that and you start beating these non-conference Power 4 teams that you should beat, that changes the narrative. And I think that helps accelerate the curve quite a bit for terms of how he can help resurrect this program.
Awesome. Well, Damian Sordelais, thank you so much. That is great insight into what's going on at Virginia Tech. And, we'll have to have you back on in the off season and see how things are progressing and where Virginia Tech is going from there. But thank you again for taking time on this holiday week to speak with us. This is Damian Sordelais. He is the Virginia Tech beat writer for the Roanoke Times. Damian, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tony, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll be right back on the Sports IQ after a quick timeout.
Everything is expensive right now. Gas, food, you name it. You're spending more, you are making the same or less money. So, what do? You rack up credit card debt. That's what you do. It's not your fault. It's the economy. And guess what? If you rack up too much credit card debt like some of us, you can't pay your bills. Then the credit card companies, as nice as they are, start hounding you for money. Then you start your downward spiral. A smart thing for you to do is to call the Zero Debt. They can help you consolidate all your credit card bills into one affordable payment. Millions of people have done it. It works to make you debt-free. Make this free call right now. It costs you nothing to learn more.
800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. That's 800-507-7293.
Talked earlier about the college football playoff rankings coming in. Producer Tony's been studying the tea leaves and going through the coffee grounds, whatever else you got to do, lighting a candle, everything else, looking at the smoke. Tony, it's funny that the top five for Rich are not going to change really until obviously Ohio State or Indiana is going to lose next week. It appears at the moment it would be Texas A&M and Georgia would be the other of those top four. But it's interesting to see here in terms of what we talked earlier. Ole Miss, Michigan, there's some teams right now, Alabama, that really the committee watching very closely what happens this weekend with them.
Yeah, Alabama, I think, is an interesting situation. This, to me, is a playoff game for Alabama. Yeah. If they lose to Auburn, that's it. The committee has placed them in the spot that they are in because they know if they lose, that's going to be it. They're 10 with a reason. I love the fact that they've got BYU ahead of Miami. We're going to see what happens in those two games. BYU needs a good showing in the last one, but I think the committee is setting this up so that nobody's surprised if BYU wins this weekend, makes the Big 12 championship game, and goes head-to-head with Texas Tech, win or lose, BYU is going to be in the playoff. They're not going to deny, a 11-2 BYU team over a possible 10-2 Miami team. I think Miami's hope at this point is they have to have the dominoes fall in such a way that they make the ACC title game. Then, win or lose, they're going to be in. Short of that, I think the committee is setting them up to leave them out because Michigan's sitting right there at 15th, just behind Vandy, just behind Utah. Look, they'll jump Utah in a heartbeat if they win at Ohio State, right? So that's the thing for Michigan. Win, and I think Michigan is going to get a bid. And the thing with Ole Miss, Larry, is really interesting. Dropping them down to 7th, and they've talked about we got to look, we got to see what happens, with Lane. Remember a couple years ago when FSU lost their quarterback and an unbeaten FSU got left out of the top 12. If this team goes out and lays an egg in the Egg Bowl, pun intended, somehow Mississippi State pulls that win or it's just a bad football game, that's going to move Ole Miss down a little bit. That will take away a home game for Ole Miss. And if Lane decides to leave, and they don't look well, they'll probably still get in, but it's going to be on the road against a really tough opponent in week 1. They're not going to do the Rebels any favors if Kiffin leaves.
Yeah. And to your point, somebody somewhere is going to be extremely disappointed that deserves a bid. Either it's Alabama or a BYU, or like you said, if Michigan beats Ohio State, they join that fray. But there are only really 10 spots you're going to because the ACC champ is going to get one. And then your group of 12 team is going to get the other. So while it's a 12 team, it's really, in terms of what we're talking about, it's only 10 to your point. And so, yeah, that's one that it's going to be somebody somewhere is going to be disappointed. That's where all these teams have to not only win, but, put up the style points. I mean,
exactly.
It sounds crazy, but Notre Dame needed to beat Syracuse. They needed to score 70. They need to put as many points on the board and just to have as wide a margin. And the same thing this week with Stanford. They're a 30-point favorite. They need to win by 30 points.
Absolutely. They can't fool around out there on the West Coast. They need to go in, get the job done, and do it. The other thing, I was reading on a lot of message boards, and some pundits were even speculating, could this be the year we get 2 group of 5 teams? Look, folks, that ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen now. Ain't going to happen next year. Ain't going to happen 5 years down the road. The group of 5 will get a bid, and that's it. I don't care how good Tulane is. I don't care how good you think Texas is. I don't care how good you think X, Y, or Z school is. You're getting one. They're giving you the token bid. You're going to be the 12th team in the field, and that's going to be it. just be ready.
Yeah. They've given you one seat at the table. They're not going to gift you a second. It ain't happening. It's about money. It's about power. I'm with you. It is not going to happen. Stop it. All right. Moment of all is next.
Hey, airline travelers, let's say you have a problem and you need to change or cancel an existing airline reservation. What do? Well, Skywatch is a free service that can help anyone with any airline reservation fix it. Whether you want to cancel it, change your dates, or add passengers, we can help fix your airline reservations so you get exactly what you need. We've updated our computer database and now have access to every airline around the globe. So now you can make one phone call regardless of who booked your airline tickets, and we'll change it, cancel it, and fix it for you. We know the insider secrets to fixing reservations that the airlines don't want you to know about. So if you need to cancel, change, or modify an existing airline reservation, call Skywatch right now. It's a free call, so let us fix it for you. 800-413-7158. 800-413-7158.
They go
800-413-7158. That's 800-413-7158.
But never in a 12-game season. Boy, just not good at all. So I guess for UMass, better luck next year, I guess. I don't know. Tough way to finish. Okay, we want to say thanks to our guests who came by. Ryan Stano, Matt Perkins, and Damian Sordelette. Appreciate you as well. Listen, it's a busy weekend. Wherever you're going, be safe getting there. Make sure you share lots of love and lots of food with others. And we'll see you tomorrow on Turkey Day here on the Sports IQ.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at SportsIQ LS. We'll see you next time.